Your AI tells you that you did $150,000 in revenue last quarter, but you actually did 59. Your AI didn't malfunction. It didn't invent a number. It read the file you gave it exactly the way you gave the data to it. And what it handed back is the correct answer to the question it thought you were asking. And nothing on your screen told you otherwise. The file opened fine, the columns were labeled, it passed every check I gave you back in Station 2. The problem was never in the file. The problem is that something was supposed to go with that file to your AI, and it didn't. And that's what we're going to cover today. This is the Build Your AI Data Workshop. 5 stations, 5 letters. STOCK. That's for source, transfer, organize, context, and keep current. You found your data, you got it out of the platform you have, you gave it a home and a name. Today is the C, context. And this is the station that goes straight into the folders that you built in the last video. Today is about teaching your AI what it's looking at. There are 2 things you need to take from today. First, you build 1 document per dataset, 1 time. Second, you check every new file against it. That's the whole station. Now, by the end of this video, you'll know the 4 parts of that document: how to get your AI to write the first draft of it for you, where it lives, and the 1 routine you run every single time a new file lands on your computer. Let's start with what you're actually up against. When you upload a file, your AI gets 2 things: the name of the file and what's inside it. That's the entire world it has to work with. It can't see your business. It can't see how you set that platform up. It can't see what you meant in your prompt. Back in the overview, I described this as handing someone an unlabeled box of files and asking them to figure it out. And this is the video where we put labels on the box. Now, the document you're building has a real name, and I'll use it once so you know the term. It's a data dictionary, but I'm going to call it a cheat sheet for most of this video because that's what it feels like when you're using it. 1 cheat sheet per data set. You write it once. It lives right next to the data, and you give it to your AI anytime you ask it to handle that data. Now, there's 4 parts, and we're going to work from the outside in because that's the order your AI has to solve them in. What the file looks like, what 1 row is, what each column means, and what to watch out for. So here's part 1. What does this file actually look like? Before your AI can understand a single column, it has to find the data table. And that's not always obvious because platform exports are full of stuff that isn't actually data. And here's what I mean. You may open a file and there are 3 separate tables stacked on top of each other in one worksheet. Or the top 6 rows of a table are a date range, a note about which filters were applied, and the real header row is on row 7. Or there are footnotes underneath the table, or there are 4 worksheets in the file and only one of them actually contains your data. I had a data set once with a 2-column row header. Column A held the main categories and column B held the subcategories underneath each one. And column A was blank on every subcategory row because a person reading it would just understand that structure. But my AI didn't know that, and I had to explain it. So write a sentence or 2. Where does the table start? What else is in the file? And is there anything about the layout that a person would understand at a glance, but that a machine wouldn't? Now, there's one shortcut here. Most of this disappears if you took the CSV option back in Station 2 when we talked about exporting your data. A CSV file generally won't have stacked tables, and it can't hold merged cells or 4 worksheets. The issue of structure matters most when Excel was your only option, and when Excel is how you downloaded the data. Now, here's part 2. What does 1 row represent? This is the $150,000 mistake from the beginning of this video, so let me go ahead and explain that now. When you pull an order out of most store platforms, you're not going to get 1 row per order. You'll generally get 1 row per product within an order. So if somebody buys 3 things, that's going to be 3 rows in the table. Fair enough so far. And here's the part that gets people. Right alongside that price of each individual item, there's often a column with the total for the entire order. And that number is repeated on every one of those 3 rows. So when you upload the file, you ask what your revenue was, your AI adds up the order total column, and a $100 order with 3 items in it gets counted as $300. You do that across an entire quarter and you get my opening number. Now, here's why nobody catches it. There's no error. Every value in that file is correct. The math is right. The columns are labeled properly. Your AI did exactly what you asked, and there's nothing wrong anywhere for it to flag as an error. There's a real difference between a file that's wrong and a file that your AI misunderstood. The first kind announces itself, but the second kind never really does. And the fix is one clear sentence. One row is one product within an order. The order total repeats on every row of the same order, so add up the line totals instead. That's it. One sentence in a document and your AI shouldn't make that mistake again. So before anything else, look at your file and answer this question out loud. What does one row represent? Is it one order? One product inside of an order? Is it one customer? One customer per day, or one visit to your website? Get that wrong, and everything downstream of it is going to be wrong too. So take the time to make sure you really understand how the data is structured. Now here's part 3. What does each column mean? Start by using plain language to describe each column. What is this in your business? In the words you'd use with a new employee on their first day. For example, net rev is revenue after refunds have been taken out. Say it the way you'd actually say it. Then you add one more thing, and what you add depends on what kind of field it is. There are 5 kinds of fields. This is the one worth screenshotting. Now, if it's a quantity, a number you'd add up or average, give the plausible range and say whether it can go negative. If it's a category or a code, list every value it can be, all of them. If order status can only be paid, pending, refunded, or partially refunded, write down all 4. That's what lets your AI know a value is wrong instead of just unfamiliar. People often skip this step, but it does more for you than the range does. So make sure you list out all those valid values. If it's a date, give the format and say which event it marks. Was it the order placed on that day? Was it the day the order shipped? Or was it the day that the order was paid for? If your file has 2 date columns, make sure each is clearly labeled in a way that distinguishes the two apart from each other. That's not extra work, by the way. That's just defining the field properly. If it's an identifier, hang on, I'm going to get those in their own section and I'll come back to it in just a moment. And if it's free text, a notes field, a product description, or something a customer typed in, just say what it is. Don't list the values. Don't give a range because there isn't one. And if you followed the red light data guidance back in the transfer video, customer names and email addresses shouldn't be in this file to begin with. So free text here mostly means product descriptions and notes. Now let's go back to the identifiers because these carry a promise I made in the very first video in this series. I told you that once your workshop was built, you'd be able to pull 2 files together and get one real answer instead of being stuck asking one narrow question at a time. This is the section that's going to make that possible. Back in the transfer video, I told you to keep your ID columns, order ID, customer ID, product ID, even though they look like they might be useless strings of numbers. And this is where they're going to earn their value. There are 3 things for every ID column that you need to capture in your cheat sheet. 1, what real-world thing does it identify? Is it an order, a customer, a product? What is it? Second, which system assigns it? Is it coming from WooCommerce? Is it coming from your CRM, your accounting software, Facebook? This one does more work than it looks like it does, and here's why. 2 files that have a column called customer ID does not mean that those files are going to connect. Your store could give a customer one number, and your email platform might give the exact same human a completely different number. Your AI can't tell the difference, and it won't throw an error either. It'll try to build a connection between those 2 files that quietly matches nothing and then hand you an answer that's useless. Third, you want a sample value copied straight out of the file. This one is small, but it will save you a lot of time. Remember from the transfer video how Excel sometimes strips leading zeros off of things? If your sales file has a product code that reads 00453 and your inventory sheet reads 453, those 2 are never going to match each other. The definition doesn't explain this to you, but a sample value makes it instantly recognizable. And let me be clear about what I'm not asking you to do here. You are not sitting down to write out which file connects to which other file. Nobody really has time to do that, and I wouldn't do it either. You describe your ID columns properly inside each dataset's own cheat sheet, and then your AI will work out the rest. If this is useful to you, hit the like button below. It genuinely helps other business owners find this stuff. And subscribe if you want the rest of the series, because there's one more station after this one that will come out next week. You won't want to miss that one or any of my other future videos. Now for part 4, what you need to watch out for. This is where you write down the things that would trip up a smart person who has never seen your data before. And there's one rule that keeps this section from turning into a complete diary. A caveat has to attach to something, a specific column, or the row definition, or the structure of the file. If it doesn't attach to anything, it isn't a caveat. Write them as bullets underneath the field they belong to, with the date the caveat started impacting the data. So things that belong here. Your ad platform's last 7 days keep changing because attribution keeps updating after the fact. Or your payment data isn't final until the following month. Or a column change, meaning on a specific date, before June of 2025, that number included tax, and after it, it didn't include tax. Now, here's what does not belong in a caveat. And I want to be specific because this is where people over document things and then get fed up and completely give up entirely. The enormous wholesale order you had in March that's never going to happen again, or the week that your website was down and it looks like demand collapsed, or the month that you raised your prices. None of that goes into this document. Those things explain a number. They don't change what a column means. So you tell your AI those things when you're asking the question it's going to analyze, not 8 months ahead of time in a cheat sheet document or a data dictionary. And half the time you won't even know what happened anyway until after you've run the analysis. Your AI is going to look at March, notice the spike, and it's going to ask you about it. Then that's the right moment to have that conversation. So here's your test to determine whether it belongs as a caveat in the cheat sheet. Does this change what a column means, or what a row is, or how the file is put together? If so, then it does go into the cheat sheet. But instead, if it explains a number, if so, it does not go into the cheat sheet. It goes into the chat when you're doing the analysis. Now, I've just described a 4-part document, and some of you are doing the math on how long it's going to take to write that. Don't worry, you're not going to start from scratch on this. In fact, you're not going to write the first draft at all. Your AI is. Give it the actual file, not a description of the file, but the file itself. Then ask it to draft the cheat sheet. Best to tell your AI that you need a data dictionary. It'll understand that term better. Then ask your AI to interview you one question at a time about anything it can't work out on its own or that it needs clarification about. That changes the job completely. Now you're not staring at a blank page trying to remember what column F is. You're reading a draft and fixing the parts that are wrong. That's a job you can easily finish, and it's a job only you can do. Now let me show you. All right, this is a sales export from a coffee roaster, and I fabricated this data for the demo in full transparency, and I trimmed it down to just the columns that we need so it's small enough to read on the screen. It's 51 rows, 20 orders, and about 2 months of data. Okay, so here's my prompt. Here's a data export from my online store. Draft a data dictionary that explains this file, what the file looks like, what one row represents, and what every column means. Then interview me one question at a time about anything you can't determine from the file itself. Okay, so here's what got generated from Claude when I did this. And honestly, it's a really good first draft here. It's recognized that one row is one product, not one order, and that the order total repeats on every line of an order. So it got that. It avoided the problem that I talked about at the beginning of this video. The net column, it noted, isn't money. And that's an important one, right? Because dividing net by quantity gives a fixed constant per product that tracks the physical size rather than the price. So it actually looked at the data and did the calculations to realize that was a problem. It noticed that the SKUs are zero padded text, that 00453 issue that I talked about. And it notes that opening this straight into Excel or Sheets could strip out those leading zeros and silently break any join to a product table. So it's included a section on that in the document. And then it's brought up a number of questions. As we go down through this, we see that it talks about the file, the structure of the file in terms of formats, size, header rows, how many columns there are, how many distinct orders there are, or distinct customers. It talks about what a row represents, one product line within one order. And then the really important piece here is that it talks about what a column represents, an order ID, that it's a text field. It gives an example and has a definition there. And it even says what to watch out for. Treat this as a label and not as a number. Don't average or sum it. And the range is gapless, which means that there's no orders which are filtered out of this window. In other words, all of the order IDs are sequential and we're not missing any. So it's got all of these different columns in here referencing what each of these columns are and what it thinks they are. And that's for me to go through and review and make sure that it has everything correct. You'll even note that it's got some question marks in here. And at the end of all of this, it's got its evidence of the net column and how it figured out that this is actually talking about weight instead of an actual net price or something like that. And then it comes back and it says, look, I've got 10 questions about this. What does net actually represent? It wants confirmation of this. Does the order total genuinely exclude shipping, tax, and discounts? How are refund amounts captured? And what does part-ref mean precisely? So it's talking about a value that was in the data file for one of these columns. So it's got a number of these questions and it's going to go work through all of these. And then it even asks at the bottom, is customer ID the WooCommerce user ID and are guest checkouts included? And this is important because even though there is a customer ID included in the table, we've got one right up here, customer ID. It doesn't say where that customer ID came from. It doesn't say what system assigned it. Did it come from my WooCommerce system? Did it come from an email system? Did it come from someplace else? So knowing where that came from is an important factor, and it's asking those questions. So there's a little bit of work that needs to happen here to fix this. And we could say that I could go through and create some notes here to help verify all of that information. And I could use these as pieces of information that I would then, for example, here where it says part-ref, what it asked about in that one question, that does mean partially refunded. That's the status of the order. And so I've got this updated file here with some information that helps to explain what all of these columns are and what all of the questions answered are relative to what Claude told me. I can put that all together. I can add it into this document that was created by Claude and then get out at the end a data dictionary or a cheat sheet that's going to be very valuable for an AI when it's actually trying to work with this data file. Now, I want to sit with something that we saw in this demonstration here that's really important and is probably the main point of this video. And that's that even though you can hand your data to your AI and ask it to create a data dictionary, and it's going to get things really well and really close, you can already see how easy it was to get that done. It may not get things perfectly done. And so you want to be careful to not just glance through that document it produces and assume that everything is okay. In this particular case, Claude even came back and asked me specific questions that it needed answers to because I told it I wanted it to do that. And that was an important thing. That's why I asked it to do that. But keep in mind, there were clearly parts of the data dictionary that it didn't get complete. There were some things that it was guessing at. It had a reason behind its guess, and in many cases, it was correct about its guess, but it was still guessing nonetheless, and it wanted to confirm those things. Some of them we needed to confirm as being correct, and other things we needed to tell the AI it made a mistake and make a correction in the file so that it understood what it was dealing with. And an important thing to note is that every one of those things it asked about was something that really only I could know. Everything else on the page, the AI handled really well. And that's the whole thing. Your AI can do the typing, it can review the data, and it can make some pretty solid guesses, but it can't necessarily do the knowing for you. It can't sit there and say, I know exactly what this is, and I can tell you what it is without you confirming it. This is why you need to make sure that you are going through these files when your AI produces them and verifying that what's in there is correct. All right, you've got a cheat sheet now. So where does it go? And how does it actually reach your AI? Now, there are three rules to keep in mind about the file itself. First, save it as a plain text file or a markdown file, not as a PDF and not in a formatted Word document. This is for the same reason I told you not to take the PDF export back in the transfer video. You want your AI reading text, not interpreting a layout. Now, you're going to get one cheat sheet per data set, and it sits in that data set's folder right next to the data it describes. And no date in the file name, because this is a document that you keep updating. That's a rule from the Organize video. Now, how do you get it to your AI? There are three ways depending on what you're using. The first way is what most of you will probably be doing, which is you upload the file into a chat window. So upload both of them, the data file and the cheat sheet, with your prompt every time. That's the whole job. Your AI is starting from scratch with every conversation, and this is the thing that stops it from guessing. The second way is that you could use a project folder or a gem if you're using Google Gemini. If your AI tool lets you build a project with knowledge files that stick around between conversations, that's a good home for your cheat sheets. But scope that project to one analysis and not your whole business. Load in only the data sets and the cheat sheets for that specific analysis for what it actually needs. Creating a tight scope is what gets you the same quality answer every time you run it, instead of a different answer depending on the day. And that lines up with something you already built. In the last video, you made named folders for the analyses you run over and over. One of those folders for one project, and they match up. Now, the third way is for the tools that read your folders directly. Claude Code, ChatGPT Codex, and others like it. You make a folder for the analytic project, and you point it at the data and the cheat sheets that the project needs. Now, you'll go back and forth with your AI a few times before it's set up exactly the way you want it, and that's normal. But how to manage that process is a bigger topic that I'm not going to get into today, so we'll leave it here for now. Now, one thing before we move on. When you update a cheat sheet, the copy in your data folder is the master, but you're going to have to update it everywhere else the cheat sheet is being used as well. If you loaded it into a project, that project is sitting there holding the old one, and we'll deal with how to keep all of that current in the next video. I want to pull three things together in this next section because I've been handing them to you one video at a time over the last several videos, and they were never really three separate things. In the transfer video, I told you to check your file at every export. In the organize video, I told you to rename it and file it in the same work session. And today I've told you to compare it against your cheat sheet. Now, that's not three habits you do at three different times. It's one habit and it fires at one moment, when a new file lands on your computer. I call it the data download routine, and it's three simple steps. Check it, file it, and log it. You want to check it. Open the file and look at five things. Does the table start where you expect it to, with a real header row? Does the date range match what you asked for? Does the row count roughly match what the platform showed you on screen? Do the columns match your cheat sheet? Nothing missing, nothing new, nothing renamed. And do the values look the way your cheat sheet says they should? Then file it, rename it to your convention, and move it into its appropriate folder. Finally, log it as one row in your export log. Checking the data comes first, and there's a reason for that. If the checks fail, there's nothing worth filling out or logging yet. So what do you do when it fails? Well, there are two possibilities, and you work them in order. First, you need to ask yourself, did you pull the right export? The right report, the right date range, the right level of detail? Go back to the platform where you pulled the data and look at what you actually selected and pull it again. That's the answer most of the time, and it's the cheapest thing to rule out that you made a mistake in the export, and it happens. Second, if you pull the data again and it comes back the same as it did the first time, then maybe your data really did change. Now you go compare this new file against the last one to clearly answer one question. What's different? Is there a new column? Did one disappear? Did something get renamed? Are the values outside the range you wrote down? And that is the point of doing this every time. The check isn't busy work. It's how you find out that your context for your data has gone out of date before you build any of your decisions on top of it. Which brings us to the last thing. What should you do when your data changes? Do you patch the cheat sheet or do you start a new one? There are two questions to guide this process. The first question is, did the file change or did a definition change? If the file changed, like a new column showed up or a column disappeared or something got renamed or a row means something different now, that's a new cheat sheet. Those are structural changes and they don't belong in a footnote. As far as your AI is concerned, that's a different data set now. But if a definition changed, you have the same columns, same rows, same layout, but one field is counting something maybe a little differently, that's a caveat. And add it underneath that field with a date that it started. Now for the second question, and I'm going to be straight with you here. A column definition can shift so far that the old numbers and the new numbers aren't comparable at all. And there's no rule I can give you that tells you exactly where that line is. It's a judgment call and it's going to be yours to make. But here's the test I'd use. Could you put last year's number and this year's numbers side by side on the same chart and have that chart tell you anything meaningful? If you can, that's a caveat to your cheat sheet. If not, it's time to start a new data dictionary. And when you do start a new one, put a date on the old one and file it with the old data. Don't number your versions. A living file has no date and a frozen one does. That's the same rule that we developed in the organized video, and it's really all you need for this purpose. Now, one last thing, and it's the one you're going to want to skip, so please don't skip it. If you have a spreadsheet in your manual folder, the ones that you keep by hand, they're going to need a cheat sheet more than anything else in your whole workshop. A platform export at least has documentation that your AI can go look up. A spreadsheet you built yourself has column names that mean something to exactly one person, you. And there's no help page anywhere for that data set. So please make sure that you create a cheat sheet for those files that you keep manually yourself. Now that's station 4, context. One cheat sheet per data set in 4 parts. What the file looks like, what one row is, what each column means, and what to watch out for. Your identifiers get the system that assigns them a sample value. Let your AI write the first draft and then correct it because you're the only one who can. Save it as plain text, right next to your data, and send it along every time that data goes anywhere. And when a new file lands, check it, file it, and log it. The Build Your AI Data Workshop checklist is linked in the description, and it walks all 5 stations with templates you can fill in as you go. The next video is the last station, K for keep current. How often you refresh all of this and how you keep everything you've just built from quietly going stale on you. Subscribe to the channel so you can catch it. I'm Rob Fernango, and this is the AI Growth Accelerator. Your AI isn't guessing because it's bad at this. It's guessing because nobody ever told it what it was working with. So let's go tell it.